Part 34. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 331. Zuyun winked at De Go, and De Go understood. This was a secret code from childhood, meaning that he should follow him. Chen Hua didn't pay attention to this side, but kept staring at the direction of the two foundation building period. Misunderstanding, this is, misunderstanding. One of them said with a breath. Yes, we work for Naihuo City, and the Silver Sword sect has a good relationship with us. The other person also hurriedly explained that they dared to hear De Go's introduction that Li Molan was from the Silver Sword sect, so they also introduced themselves. Het. Li Molan sneered immediately, then took out his long sword and cut off the head of the person who was talking behind him. Then he looked at the only person left coldly and shouted in a delicate voice, "People from the Silver Sword sect all wear the same clothes. If you are from Naihuo City, you must recognize my outfit. But you sneaked up and obviously injured us seriously. In this case, you are not from Naihuo City." The remaining person was splashed with blood on his face. Seeing that Li Molan was so decisive and did not give his companions a chance to explain, he couldn't help but panic in his heart. He didn't know where he got the strength, and he spoke much more smoothly. But, he was extremely panicked. "Fairy, spare me. It's all him. He said that the city lord was short of people, so he said he wanted to cripple you. Then he would strip your clothes and pull out your tongue. No one would recognize you. We can also exchange your heads for spirit stones." Hearing this, Zuyun couldn't help but be shocked. Obviously, before entering the demon refining tower, he was sure that the Lord of Naihuo City was going to do something big. Now it seems that it is a big thing that will cost lives. What exactly will it be? He did not speak, but planned to see how Li Molan would deal with it. He believed that Li Molan would find out the information he wanted to know from this person, and then make plans. Humph. Stop talking nonsense. How dare Naihuo City be an enemy of our Silver Sword sect? Li Molan snorted disdainfully, and then said, "In my opinion, you still want to deceive me. To be honest, I will give you a quick death. Otherwise, let you taste the ability of my Silver Sword sect to torture people." Zuyun also sneered in his heart. It seems that what this foundation building period said is almost true. Others don't know, but he knows that the Lord of Naihuo City really dares to be an enemy of the Silver Sword sect. Because there is a Yuanying period who lets the city lord do things, how could he be afraid of your Silver Sword sect? Even at that time, the Lord of Naihuo City was happy to see Yuan Rou and others kill the Wu family, probably to paralyze the Silver Sword sect and prevent them from finding clues. The world of immortal cultivation is indeed full of deception. Whoever can deceive in the end is the biggest winner. At this time, Zuyun threw Li Mo's words behind his head. What Silver Sword sect women are the best at deceiving people? I'm afraid that all the cultivators in Ya realm will lie. Really, Fairy Li, if I lied in the slightest, you don't have to kill me, I will be struck to death by 5 thunders. The foundation building period hurriedly swore to prove his innocence. It's all death, he would rather choose a comfortable way to die. Really? Li Molan's eyes flickered. In fact, she had already believed the words of the foundation building period. Since Master Wenzilan sent her alone, how could she not have some ability? It's just that usually in the Silver Sword sect, there is no need for intrigue. Of course, she also concealed a little to confuse De Go and Chen Hua's feelings towards her. Chen Hua actually had a crush on Li Molan. But De Go only maintained a superficial relationship. Then tell me, what does the city lord want us to do? Li Molan thrust his sword forward again, pressing on the throat of the foundation building period. With a little force, the sword could pierce his neck. Fairy, the city lord needs the blood of 10,000 people to summon the big monster. As soon as this was said, everyone was extremely shocked. The blood of 10,000 people? Zhu Yun's eyes widened even more. What a big deal. Moreover, summoning a big monster? What kind of monster? It takes 10,000 people to summon. Isn't he afraid that the monster he summoned will kill him? In addition to being shocked, Zhu Yun suddenly reacted. Could it be that there were omissions in the interrogation he had done outside? Perhaps, the Yuanying period also gave the Naihuo city lord a treasure to suppress the big monster. Zhu Yun didn't know what abilities the nascent soul stage had. But he did know. Once the big demon was subdued by the lord of Naihuo city and taken out of the demon refining tower, I'm afraid the entire Ya realm would be devastated. Those who can kill 10,000 people to summon the big demon can probably kill tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of people. No, we can't let him succeed. His breathing gradually became rapid, and the big dog immediately noticed the situation and asked Zhu Yun, whispering, "Xiaozhu, what's wrong?" Chen Hua also looked over. Zhu Yun took a deep breath and said, "If you have a chance to leave the demon refining tower, you should leave Chuzhu as soon as possible." Where to go? Chen Hua was stunned, he didn't think that far. Zhu Yun glanced at him and said, "Chuzhu can go directly to Yunzhou. Why go back to Yunzhou? The spiritual power there is so poor, and it is of no help for cultivation. I won't go back." Chen Hua shook his head repeatedly, and De Go said, "Xiaozhu, is something big going to happen?" Zhu Yun nodded, and began to think in his mind, when the matter here is over, he will go to Wuneng and the others first, or find a place to enter the Daoliuli mirror to break through. Until he reached the Jindan stage, he had no confidence to face the Lord of Naihuo city. "I won't go back," De Go fixed his eyes and said, "I will go with you." Only then did Chen Hua react, and he puffed up his chest and said, "Me too." Zhu Yun did not speak, but pursed his lips in the direction of Li Molan, and the big dog immediately understood. This expression means that Li Molan can't believe it. The big dog blinked his left eye, and Zhu Yun nodded again. "You are." Chen Hua looked at the two people playing riddles and didn't know why. "You follow your brother." Zhu Yun still remembered the identities the two pretended to be at this time, and said to Chen Hua. Chen Hua scratched his head and looked at the big dog. The big dog shook his head, signaling him to stop talking. But in fact, he didn't know how to explain it to Chen Hua. After staying in Silver Sword sect for nearly 3 years, he couldn't see that Chen Hua was fascinated by Li Molan. It wouldn't have mattered to him before he met Zhu Yun. To him, Chen Hua's brain wasn't fast enough and he wasn't stupid either. At least, they have a little less experience. Unlike me and Zhu Yun, they were raised in the mountains and competed with teenagers who were much older than the three of them. After entering the immortal path, he encountered a lot of time, which made him always wary. Although Chen Hua's life was not easy, fortunately, he met Zhu Yun and De Go one after another. I've seen the evil in people's hearts, but not that much. And after arriving at Wanjian Mountain, the big dog will help with everything. Now, Zhu Yun has made it clear that Li Molan is not a good person, and Big Dog will naturally believe him. Chen Hua was puzzled and hesitated for a moment, but then shook his head at the big dog. But at this moment, a scream suddenly came from over there. All three of them turned their heads and saw with their own eyes that silver sword pierced through the neck of the Foundation establishment stage. When the body dies, the Tao disappears. Zhu Yun didn't mean to let them go, but the result was that they died in the hands of Li Molan. But Li Molan seemed to have experienced something ordinary. He pulled out the sword with a smile, and then walked towards Zhu Yun and the others. "Three of you, what are you talking about?" Although she had been asking questions before, she had actually been paying attention here. "I didn't see the expressions of the three people, but through the intermittent conversations, I could guess a little bit. Fairy Li, we just had a casual chat, we didn't say anything." When Chen Hua saw Li Molan, he was a little distracted and opened his mouth. Fellow Taoist Ziobai, Taoist Dabai, we still have things to do. I wonder if this fellow Taoist Chen Hua would like to go with us. Li Molan said as if nothing happened, but there was a killing intent in his eyes. Because she had preconceived the idea that Zhu Yun was from the Luo sect. She didn't know what the grudge was between the Silver Sword sect and the Luo sect. But there is an order in the sect that if anyone from Luo sect is seen, they will be killed without mercy. At the moment, she still needs people, so she decided not to break up with the big dog for the time being. Fairy Li, Zhu Yun said suddenly, if you have anything to say, let's say it in a clear face. If I remember correctly, the Luo sect and the Silver Sword section are mortal enemies. Hearing this, Li Molan's pupils suddenly shrank, he drew his sword and stabbed Zhu Yun. So, you are from the Luo sect? Then die. It was too late, but it was too soon. Just when the long sword was about to hit Zhu Yun's chest, a piece of earth-yellow armor suddenly appeared in front of Zhu Yun. Clang! The silver sword vibrated on the armor, making the sound of gold and iron clashing. The three of them were secretly shocked, this Li Molan actually had such strength. Big Dog and Chen Hua were even more shocked. They practiced sword fighting with Li Molan for 3 years, but they didn't know that her sword was so powerful. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 332. Fairy Li, why did you attack? Big Dog suddenly reacted and slapped Li Majian with his sword. In the past 3 years, he and Li Molan had sparred a lot in the Silver Sword sect, and he thought he was very familiar with Li Molan's sword. But how could he know that Li Molan had been pretending all the time? She just backhanded a sword and lightly dodged Big Dog's giant sword, but because of this, she lost the opportunity to pursue Zhu Yun. Of course, even if she pursued, she might not hurt Zhu Yun. Big Dog had been reminded by Zhu Yun before that he should not go with Li Molan, but he didn't know the reason, just because of his unconditional trust in Zhu Yun. On the contrary, Chen Hua saw Li Molan attacking Zhu Yun, and Big Dog got in, and he couldn't help but stand there, not knowing what to do. Zhu Yun's face was gloomy. He didn't expect that Li Molan would be so cruel. If he hadn't reacted faster, he would have been seriously injured if not dead. With the Changsheng Ju under his feet, Zhu Yun quickly pinched a Jushin Leifu. Just as he was about to start, he saw Chen Hua suddenly block the crowd. Don't fight, why are you fighting for no reason? He looked anxious, looking around, afraid that one of the parties would suddenly attack. Ziobai, get out of the way. You have been in the Silver Sword sect for 3 years, don't you know that the Luo sect is our Silver Sword sect's enemy? Li Molan shouted in a delicate voice. Chen Hua hurriedly explained, Fairy Li, Zhu Yun is not from the Luo sect, you have to believe me. I know this Luo curse, we took it from others back then. He remembered very clearly that the first time he went down the mountain with Zhu Yun, he encountered 2 robbers. One of the robbers had a Luo curse in his storage bag. It's just that Chen Hua was in the Silver Sword sect, and when he heard Luo sect, he just felt familiar. And when he heard Li Molan say that Zhu Yun was from Luo sect, he knew it was a misunderstanding. Zhu Yun. But Li Molan's mind was not here, but the name that Chen Hua called out in a hurry. She stabbed the sword from Chen Hua's side and said to Zhu Yun, Humph, Ziobai Daiu, I didn't expect you to lie to me too. Chen Hua was immediately anxious, how did I lie to you? You still say no? When he came, he said his name was Chen Hua, and now you call him Zhu Yun, what is this if not lying to me? I didn't expect you to be such a person, I usually say. Li Molan deliberately kept it a secret, and her tone was a bit like teasing Chen Hua's appetite. What else? Chen Hua was fooled, and his tone rose and he said anxiously. Humph. Li Molan stomped her feet and pretended to be angry, get out of the way. Anyway, men are no good, even the name is a lie to me. After that, she took the unique sword steps of the Silver Sword sect, and when she flashed past Chen Hua like a butterfly flying through flowers, her body quickly turned into two. One attacked Zhu Yun, and the other attacked the big dog. Dago's face suddenly became extremely gloomy. He was not stupid. He had already seen that Li Molan was going to start to divide Chen Hua, forming a 2-on-2 situation. Even if Chen Hua did not stand on her side, at least he would hold them both back. The most important thing was that Dago had long known that Chen Hua had a crush on Li Molan. Fairy Li, this is a bit unkind. His swordsmanship never retreated, and he became more and more courageous. He knew that Li Molan might be stronger than him, but he also went forward without fear. Dago could see that Zhu Yun's realm was higher than Li Molan's, but as a sword cultivator, he knew that if the fighting power of a sword cultivator was unleashed, it would be extremely powerful. Not to mention that Li Molan revealed murderous intent at this time. He stood on Zhu Yun's side without hesitation and yelled at Chen Hua, "Hua Zi, what the hell are you doing? Don't be obsessed with sex." Chen Hua's face turned red and he was immediately angry. This kind of thing was originally hidden in the heart, but was brought to the surface by Dago, and from the meaning of this, he was asked to attack Li Molan. How is this possible? It was obviously a misunderstanding. In this hesitation, Chen Hua lost the opportunity to attack. No matter who he helped, it was too late. Dago's heart was as hard as a rock. Even if Chen Hua did not move, he was not distracted at all. He chopped down the attacking Li Molan. On the other side, Zhu Yun frowned when he saw Chen Hua's face. In his eyes, Chen Hua was no different from Dago and Ergo. Although he met him later, he knew that this kid was a good person after spending some time with him in the valley. He was just relatively dull. If Li Molan was killed directly, I am afraid that this kid would hate me. If he caused him to have a demon in his heart, this would be very bad. Because of this thought, Zhu Yun did not throw out the Jushin Lei Fu, but used the Liwo curse again. The fire turned into dragons, and 5 fire dragons directly trapped Li Molan in them, constantly approaching her body. Unexpectedly, Li Molan was not afraid of the fire spell at all, and even when she dodged and moved, there was always a sword that would cut the fire dragon. Each sword would consume a lot of the fire dragon's spiritual power. Zhu Yun was surprised. He had killed many enemies with the fire spell and had encountered a scorching situation. But at this time, Li Molan seemed to have clearly found the weakness of the fire spell. On the other side, the big dog was fighting with another Li Molan. The big dog's swordsmanship was as powerful as a rainbow, but Li Molan was not a vegetarian either. He advanced and retreated in an orderly manner and was at ease. And the Li Molan in front of Zhu Yun was even more so. However, Zhu Yun didn't take it to heart. His Liwo spell was different from that of the Liwo sect. Because all his spiritual power comes from the fire spirit beat in his heart. The chaotic spiritual power in Danshan has not moved at all. If you want to fight for consumption, it depends on whether your spiritual power is enough. Zhu Yun had no intention of killing Li Molan at this time. Even if he kills her, he has to wait until she is exhausted before Chen Hua can see her true face. He couldn't help but think to himself, it would be great if Li Mo were here. With that kid's straightforward mind, he wouldn't need to worry at all. Chen Hua had stopped intervening, with a worried look on his face. On one hand, he was afraid that Li Molan would be injured, and on the other hand, he was afraid that Big Dog and Chen Hua would be injured. But at this time, it seemed that no one could do anything to anyone, so he felt more relaxed and began to persuade others to make peace. Stop fighting and talk to me if you have something to say. Misunderstanding, these are all misunderstandings. A gentleman speaks with words but never with hands. Speaking of this, Li Molan said softly, "Xiao Bai, I am a woman, not a gentleman." The big dog also yelled, "Chen Hua, don't you see enough hypocrites in the world of immortality? I don't despise being a gentleman. On the contrary, it's you, haven't you woke up yet? Zhu Yun smiled and said nothing. Anyway, he was sure of victory. Even if he couldn't really defeat Li Molan, at worst, he would kill her with the talisman. If that doesn't work, I still have the Chaos Palm, the Golden Sun Curse, and the 9 turns and 9 suns formation. There are many means. But this unintentional smile actually angered Li Molan. Although the 5 fire dragons surrounding her only shrunk a little, they were actually killed by her on the spiritual power node. That is to say, these fire dragons are extremely fragile. The reason why she didn't force it open was because she wanted to confuse Zhu Yun. After all the nodes of the 5 fire dragons were destroyed by her, she could make these fire dragons disperse at any time, so as to make a sneak attack and face Zhu Yun directly. Fellow Taoist Xiaobai, so your name is Chen Hua. I didn't expect you to lie to me too. At such a critical moment, Li Molan did not forget to provoke Chen Hua. Chen Hua's face turned red, and he waved his hands repeatedly. Fairy Li, I told you, this is a misunderstanding, it really is a misunderstanding. Zhu Yun heard this and sighed, Huazi, you. The more Chen Hua behaves like this, the more worried he becomes. This drama is a bit too deep, so I can't kill Li Molan easily. Unexpectedly, just when Zhu Yun opened his mouth, Li Molan broke out. Let me go. As soon as she finished speaking, the 5 fire dragons dispersed out of thin air, and the distance between her and Zhu Yun was only 7 or 8 steps. For those who know sword steps, 7 or 8 steps only take one breath. The figure fighting with the big dog also quickly moved towards the side. When the 2 bodies merged into one, the silver sword in her hand was already blooming with white light, and the silver light was shining. Wind silver sword. The silver light was like the wind, silent, but it moved very quickly, and it looked like Li Molan had already integrated all his spiritual power into the sword. This sword shocked Zhu Yun. Only in the pill-forming stage had he ever felt like this. This sword cultivator from the silver sword section. Not simple. No time to sigh, no time to hide. Even if he uses chaotic spiritual power to drive the longevity secret. In the flash of lightning, he flipped his right hand and faced him with only his flesh palm. Wish Yun. Little Wish. Big Dog and Chen Hua were frightened and spoke out. They are also sword cultivators. How can they not feel the power of this sword? With just a fleshy palm, I'm afraid this hand will be broken off. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 333. Just when everyone, including Li Molan, thought that Zhu Yun's hand was going to be broken into several pieces, there was a sudden crisp sound. Then, as the silver light disappeared in the blink of an eye, Li Molan's silver sword was instantly broken into several pieces. At the same time, Zhu Yun was not only unscathed, but also took advantage of Li Molan's force to bully her and hit her on the bone with the palm. Crack. Although there were no moves, Zhu Yun's palm gathered huge spiritual power. Li Molan's left peepa bone broke instantly and made a crisp sound. Ah! Li Molan screamed and flew backwards. Before the big dog could react, Chen Hua hurried forward, jumped down, and hugged Li Molan in his arms. Xiaozhu, are you okay? The big dog looked at Chen Hua angrily, then ran to Zhu Yun's side and asked quickly. Fine. Zhu Yun sighed and glanced at the talisman in his hand. It was a good thing that could block a blow in the pill formation stage, but now it has turned into a jifen. This talisman, just for the last time, was useless after resisting Li Molan's attack. If he wasn't in a desperate situation, Zhu Yun would definitely not know how to use the talisman. But in fact, Li Molan's sword was too powerful, and he did not have the confidence to block it with the earth armor talisman. "It's okay," Daegu let out a long breath, then turned around and shouted angrily at Chen Hua, "Hua Zi, why don't you humming wake up?" Chen Hua's eyes were red and his chest was stained with blood. These were all just spit out by Li Molan. The broken silver sword was her natal magic weapon, and Li Molan naturally suffered backlash. "Big dog, Zuyun. It's obviously a misunderstanding, why do you still kill me?" Chen Hua roared angrily, his whole body trembling uncontrollably. And Li Molan in her arms was as angry as a gossamer. If she were in the realm of forming pills, she would be able to withstand the counter-shock power of this talisman, but no matter how strong her combat power was, she would still be in the foundation building stage. It was as if she had been forcibly eaten by her own sword, and then was killed by Zuyun. "Hurt? Is it a misunderstanding?" Zuyun raised his eyebrows and said, "Yes, it was a misunderstanding before, but you have already said that I am not from the Liwo sect, but she still attacked me. Do you think this is just a misunderstanding?" As soon as these words came out, Chen Hua suddenly choked. It looked like the fight lasted for several rounds, but in fact, not much time passed at all. But he opened his mouth and wanted to help Li Molan speak, because he knew that Zuyun had the elixir in his possession, and he had to know that when he was given the elixir to nourish him, he had to take the whole bottle. If the misunderstanding can be solved, it can naturally help Li Molan heal. Unfortunately, Chen Hua didn't know where to start. "How well do you know the Silver Sword sect?" At this moment, Zuyun turned to ask the big dog. Big dog frowned and pondered. After a moment, he said, "There are mostly female cultivators in the Silver Sword sect, and they are all sword refiners. I don't know the rest. But Senior Luo and their sect leader are old acquaintances." Zuyun looked at Chen Hua again. "What do you think?" "I don't know about others, but Fairy Li is good looking, speaks well, and can also practice swordsmanship. I like staying in the Silver Sword sect very much." Chen Hua looked down at Li Molan, whose eyes were closed and his eyelids were trembling. He gritted his teeth and expressed his feelings. If he hadn't said so himself, Zuyun would still kill people forcefully. "I didn't expect that the cold boy back then turned out to be a passionate person." Zuyun's face showed sarcasm, and then he said calmly, "I remember, when I met you earlier, I told you what you came to do in the demon refining tower, right?" Chen Hua was stunned and said subconsciously, "Looking for someone." "That's right," Zuyun put away his smile and said, "The person I'm looking for was plotted by the Silver Sword sect, and the entire family was destroyed. And the only person sent out by the Silver Sword sect was a female cultivator." "What?" Both of them were shocked, and Big Dog was even more incredulous. How could a female cultivator destroy an entire family? Although he has not been in Chuzhu for a long time, Daegu also knows that Chuzhu and Yeazhu belong to the same level. Even if the people sent out by the Silver Sword sect were in the Dan formation stage, they would not be able to exterminate the clan so easily. "Sometimes, you don't need to use a sword to kill people," Zuyun pointed at his mouth and sighed. "At that moment, I really understood another meaning of the word fearful." "You mean?" Big Dog and Chen Hua frowned at the same time. "The disciple of the Silver Sword sect who was sent out is only in the foundation building stage." Zuyun put his hands behind his back and told Yuan Ro's story. However, he concealed the void-breaking spiritual eye technique and the heavenly talisman. Fragments. "It turns out, that's it?" The big dog looked in disbelief. During his 3 years in the Silver Sword sect, he had met countless female cultivators, but he never thought that such a sinister human heart was hidden under those beautiful skins. Chen Hua couldn't accept it. His instinct told him that he should trust Zuyun, because Zuyun has never lied to him. But the weak, soft, and delicate body in his arms made him reluctant to let go. "By the way," Zuyun suddenly grinned, "I also met the young master of the Liwo sect, and he told me a wise saying about the Silver Sword sect. Before the two of them could ask questions, Zuyun said directly, the more beautiful a woman is, the better she is at lying. As soon as these words came out, Li Molan opened his eyes suddenly, broke away from Chen Hua's hand in an instant, took 3 steps and 2 steps at a time, dragging his seriously injured body to a few steps away. But her weak body restricted her movements, and the chaotic spiritual power in her body made it impossible for her to support much. If she hadn't just taken a few breaths under Chen Hua's cover, she wouldn't have been able to escape even these 2 steps. There was a vigilant look in her eyes, and she gasped, You are indeed, related to the Liwo sect. I am related to Liwo sect, but I am not from Liwo section. Zuyun looked over with an inexplicable expression, spread his hands, and deliberately pretended to be helpless. But this gesture angered Li Molan again. And Zuyun did it on purpose. He wanted Chen Hua to see Li Molan's true face. In other words, see the true face of Silver Sword sect. He didn't think his vision was that good. But the murderous intention revealed by Li Molan earlier, and after Chen Hua said it was a misunderstanding, is enough to show that as long as Zuyun stands on Li Mo's side, he will have an inseparable grudge with the Silver Sword sect. At the same time, he also wanted to protect Wu Neng and Wu Nan. Maybe Li Molan appeared here because of those two people. He knew that many sects had such things as soul cards. He heard Sun Suanhua say it when he was in Lingjian sect. At that time, Wan Jianshan sent people over again, and Sun Qiniang also said that it was because of the soul card. This is true whether it is Wan Laozhen or the foundation building period that comes later. He had to be careful. He didn't know much about the Silver Sword sect, but being able to move the Liwo sect for more than a dozen pill-forming stages reflected the Silver Sword sect's strength from the side. Anyone who has anything to do with the Liwo sect will die. Li Molan's eyes were full of hatred. If Zuyun hadn't known that the two feuds were caused by their respective sect masters, he almost thought he had taken advantage of Li Molan. But obviously, you can't kill me now, Zuyun said and laughed, as if he didn't take her seriously at all. Li Molan's chest kept rising and falling. After a while, she suddenly smiled, turned to look at Chen Hua and giggled, Fellow Taoist Xiaobai, my master said that after returning this time, he will let me become a Taoist couple with you. What? Chen Hua was shocked and blurted out, is it true? The big dog shouted quickly, Hua Zi, didn't you listen to what Xiao Zhu just said? The more beautiful the Silver Sword sect's women are, the more they will lie to others. Chen Hua gritted his teeth and said loudly, I think you guys just misunderstood. Zuyun is not from the Liwo section. He obtained the Liwo curse with me in Yunzhou. And Fairy Li. He turned to stare at Li Molan, with a very sincere look in his eyes, and said seriously, since he is not from the Liwo sect, why are you trying to take advantage of this? As if he couldn't stand Chen Hua's scorching gaze, Li Molan lowered his head shyly, even fidgeting with the corner of his clothes, and whispered, but, he can use the Liwo curse. In Chuzhu, as long as you can use the Liwo spell, you are a member of the Liwo sect. Zuyun sneered in his heart and immediately guessed Li Molan's thoughts. He couldn't help but secretly praise this method of acting and playing with people's hearts. He was much better than himself. Not only did she seize Chen Hua's weakness, but she also retreated to make progress, allowing Chen Hua to slowly become his shield, thereby allowing herself to use the enemy as a weapon. Sure enough, Master was right when he said it, in this world of cultivating immortals, only women and hypocrites are difficult to raise. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 334. Zuyun could kill Li Molan easily. But at the moment, Chen Hua stood between Li Molan and him, which hindered him from making a move. Moreover, Li Molan had completely grasped Chen Hua's mind. It's very difficult. Zuyun blinked at the big dog and said with his eyes. When the two were in Xianxia mountain before, they had communicated with each other through eye contact. The big dog hesitated for only a moment, and suddenly raised his sword and rushed towards Xianxia. "You ungrateful dog, you told me what would happen after meeting Zuyun. What would happen? Now look, you forget your loyalty for the sake of beauty." After saying that, he slashed with the sword. Xianxia was shocked. He never thought that the big dog would attack him, but fortunately, he knew the big dog well, and took the tricky sword step to avoid this powerful blow. The big sword slashed into the air and fell to the ground. The sword tip cut a small gully, which was enough to show how much strength the big dog had used. Just as Xianxia dodged, the big dog turned the sword, kicked hard with his hind legs, and rushed out quickly, with the tip of the sword shining with cold light and sharpness, pointing directly at Li Molan. Zuyun hurriedly said, "Big dog, don't." It was very easy for Zuyun to kill Li Molan. The reason why he didn't do it was because he was afraid that Xianxia would hate him. In fact, this was a dirty and tiring job, but the big dog took it on himself. "Xiaozu, why not?" During the attack, the big dog smiled heartily and asked back. As soon as the voice fell, the sword was already there. Li Molan didn't react in time. A few breaths ago, she saw the big dog attacking Xianxia, and thought that the big dog wanted to contain Xianxia so that Zuyun could kill her, so her attention was all on Zuyun. But she didn't expect that the big dog was just a feint. The attack was just like the real thing, just to distract her attention. Seeing that the broadsword was about to cut him in half, Li Molan bit her silver teeth, gnashing with a sound. A cold light flashed in her beautiful eyes, and she swung her sleeves. Voila! A silver light suddenly flashed and hit the big dog's sword. The silver light came with great force and suddenly. At such a close distance, the big dog had no time to dodge. Of course, his swordsmanship was unstoppable and he couldn't dodge it. "Ha!" he shouted in a deep voice and raised his strength again. With a clang, the big sword hit the silver light. Feeling the huge force from the tiger's mouth, the big dog felt the pain, but did not choose to let go, but continued to stab. The silver light was immediately cut to the ground by the big dog, and after the sword tip shook a few times, it deviated a little and pierced into Li Molan's right chest, passing through the body. And the big dog's thick forearm was also cracked, and blood splattered. Puff! Li Molan's eyes widened, her face full of disbelief. This silver light is her protective magic weapon, which is extremely useful and one of her trump cards. However, she didn't expect that after the big dog was hit by the backlash, he would kill him even if his hand was crippled. Why is this happening? Li Molan suddenly felt her eyelids heavy, but her eyes were always locked on the big dog. She didn't believe that the big dog, who was with her almost every day, would be so cruel. Fairy Li. Big dog. Seeing that both sides were injured, Xianxia and Zuyun shouted at the same time and ran over separately. Zuyun came later, and after the big dog stabbed Li Molan, his body shook, and his right hand holding the sword was shaken into blood foam from the elbow. "Why are you so stupid?" Zuyun roared and hugged the shaky big dog, took out a whole bottle of red blood pills from the storage bag, and stuffed it into the big dog's mouth. But Xianxia supported Li Molan, his expression full of pain. On one side is a good brother, and on the other side is the woman she has loved for a long time. Cruel, so cruel. Li Molan has closed her eyes and murmured unconsciously, "Fairy Li." Until Li Molan's breath was gone, Xianxia roared to the two of them, "Are you satisfied now?" "Satisfied." Zuyun raised his head and looked at him with a cold face. Xianxia was silent and shuddered involuntarily. This was the first time he saw Zuyun with such an expression in all the years he had known him. "Xianxia, De Go is trying to save you, don't you know?" "Save me, save me." Xianxia held his head in pain, tears streaming down his face. Why did you kill her to save me? At this time, De Gaux's weak voice sounded, and he said with a miserable smile, Huazi, I believe in Xiaozu. But Chen Hua raised his head with tears on his face. No. But, why don't you think about it? I have been practicing with her for 3 years in the Silver Sword sect for so long. I thought I was open and honest with her, but I never thought she kept so many tricks, don't you know? Listening to De Gaux's intermittent words, Chen Hua felt a pain in his heart. How could he not know all this? It's just that he fell in love with her first, and then the incident happened suddenly. He couldn't accept it at all for a while. Since he embarked on the immortal path, since the Spirit Sword sect, no one has ever cared about him except Zuyun and De Gaux. Even in Wanjian Mountain, Jian Shiba taught him the way of the sword only because of his strong character. In addition to cultivation, it's still cultivation. It's rare to meet a female cultivator who is willing to joke with him, and she is also a stunning beauty. In addition to Li Molin's deliberate efforts, how can he not fall? It can be said that Li Molin's plan almost succeeded. If Zuyun hadn't suddenly appeared, the big dog might have been manipulated by her. It's a pity that when Zuyun comes, he will only choose to believe Zuyun. This is why he would rather bear the infamy Chen Hua gave him than kill Li Molin. I just didn't expect that the price of killing her would be half of my arm. The big dog endured the severe pain and looked down at the wound. Under the influence of the red blood pill, the wound no longer bleeds. But he has no regrets. Big dog, why are you so stupid? Zuyun held the big dog in his arms, and then said, but don't worry, I will definitely find a way to reshape your body and let your hands grow back. Xiaozu, the big dog grinned, trying to break free from Zuyun's arms, but accidentally touched the wound, and grimaced in pain. After a while, he continued, it's just a hand, the immortal cultivators, what's wrong with my hands? Anyway, I only use swords, and I can't use spells like you. At worst, go back to Yunzhou and ask Ergu's father to install an iron hook for me. Seeing what Zuyun wanted to say, Big Dog quickly said, Xiaozu, we brothers, there is no need to say anything. I know you can make elixirs and will help me find the next elixir. But you also have to practice, this is too much of a delay. Instead of doing this, I might as well let myself cultivate to the nascent soul stage and reshape my body. Seeing that he didn't care, Zuyun's heart ached and said, you are only in the middle stage of foundation building now, and it will probably take hundreds of years to reach nascent soul. I'm not even afraid, but you're so scared. The big dog laughed and scolded, saying, it's okay. Anyway, I'm very talented and I'm not slow in practicing. My right hand is gone, but I still have my left hand that I can use with a sword. But I can't accompany you to wander around Yezhu and Chuzhu. Zuyun's heart moved and he said, you want to go back to Yunzhou? But the spiritual power there is poor. Are you stupid? Big Dog said, pretending to be relaxed, for me as a sword cultivator, perseverance is the main priority, understanding is second, and spiritual power is third. Alas, Zuyun sighed. He knew the big dog's temperament. Once he made a decision, even 10 cows could not bring him back, so he had to say, then let's do this. Once you leave the demon refining tower, I will send you to Yunzhou. Now Lingjian sect has undergone earth-shaking changes, I believe you will like it. The big dog's eyes lit up and he asked curiously, what happened to the Lingjian sect? Spirit Sword section. Zuyun looked up into the distance and said with a smile, the current sect master is Sun Qiniang. And she is already in the pill formation stage, so she can take good care of you. Of course, Ergu is also there. Real. The big dog was overjoyed. He quickly stood up straight and said happily, that would be great. I will go to Lingjian sect and just practice with peace of mind. Hey, my junior sister has become the sect leader, so I will go through the back door and join in. Elder Dang Dang, who doesn't care about anything, is that okay? Zuyun couldn't help but laugh, but when he saw the big dog's broken arm, he felt uncomfortable again. He put away his smile and said, "Anyway, you just need to practice hard. However, now you need to take good care of your injuries. You sit down and refine the medicine first. Huazi and I will talk." With that said, he patted the big dog on the shoulder and walked towards Chen Hua. "What do you want to say to me? Do you also want me to go back to Yunzhou?" While Zuyun was talking to Big Dog, Chen Hua sat slumped on the ground, looking at Li Molin's cold body with dull eyes. Like a frozen beauty, like a withered rose, it is forever fixed here. Huazi, Zuyun also sat on the floor opposite Chen Hua and said seriously, "Everyone's path is chosen by themselves. I have no right to decide how you go, but I just want to tell you that I also treat you like a brother." Chen Hua covered her face and burst into tears. I know. But I just can't let her go." Zuyun sighed. He believed Chen Hua. Otherwise, with his understanding of Chen Hua, how could he not take action? You must know that at that time, Chen Hua dared to disobey his master Mu Huhui for the sake of Zuyun. He is also a sweetheart. It's just that at this time, wouldn't it be too affectionate and sexual? To do this for a female cultivator. Zuyun felt a burst of emotion in his heart, but he couldn't help but think of Mengwei and Sun Qiniang. "Huazi, I won't say much else. I just want to tell you, do you want to go with me, or?" Zuyun didn't say the next words, but he knew that Chen Hua understood. After a while, Chen Hua said, "Zuyun, after leaving the demon refining tower, let's say goodbye." Zuyun couldn't breathe. What he was worried about was finally coming. "But then I thought about it, everyone will always encounter difficulties in their hearts. You can only overcome this difficulty by yourself before you can step into a new world." Thinking of this, Zuyun nodded slowly. Looking back at the big dog who was refining the medicine, Zuyun asked again, "Then what are your plans?" Chen Hua said without hesitation, "I want to go to Silver Sword Sect." Silver Sword Sect. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 335. Yes, Silver Sword Sect. When he said this, Chen Hua's eyes were facing Li Molin. Zuyun said, "Huazi, please forgive me. When you go to the Silver Sword Sect, how do you explain her death?" The Silver Sword Sect is also a big force in Chuzhu, and it is not like our original Lingjian sect, which ignores the death of ordinary disciples. Chen Hua smiled bitterly and said, "How could I not know? But Li Xianxia was born in the Silver Sword section after she died, I also want to take her back. In addition, Senior Luo is still in the Silver Sword section." Zuyun was stunned, then nodded, and said, "It turns out that I still have such an idea, it was me who was abrupt." Chen Hua smiled and said, "Zuyun, in addition to taking Fairy Li back to the Silver Sword sect and giving her master an explanation, it was also because of Senior Luo. Big Dog needs to return to Yunzhou, so naturally he needs me there. Otherwise, I'm afraid that Senior Luo will misunderstand. Besides, I am also a swordsman, so I can probably practice with peace of mind in the Silver Sword section." Zuyun understood what he meant, so he stopped talking and took out some pills from his storage bag and said, "You can keep these for use." Chen Hua was not polite, took it, and just stuffed it into his arms, when he saw Zuyun took out more than 10 talismans. This is. He knew the Firebird talisman, but there were some he didn't recognize among the stack of talismans. The Sky-Gathering Thunder talisman is very powerful when used, but remember, don't use it unless absolutely necessary. Just use it as your trump card. Thank you. Chen Hua stood up slowly and said, "It's not like you at all to be so foreign to me." Zuyun smiled and patted Chen Hua on the shoulder, then looked at Li Molin and said, then will you take her body back, or turn it into ashes? I'll put her in the storage bag. After all, I don't know what the rules are in the silver sword section. After that, Chen Hua carefully put away Li Molan. And here, Big Dog has also finished refining the red blood pill, and the pale color on his face caused by blood loss has also disappeared, but his breath is still a little weak, but Zuyun can see that Big Dog is fine. Problem. I saw him standing up with the big sword in his left hand, dancing casually a few times, and his sword moves were a little unfamiliar. Big Dog, I'm sorry. Chen Hua took the initiative and walked towards the Big Dog, apologetically. It doesn't matter, you have to remember that Zuyun will not harm us. The Big Dog is considerate and doesn't care at all. But your hands. Chen Hua bit his lip, feeling very sorry. Hee, didn't I say that? When I reach the nascent soul stage, I can reshape my body. If you have a chance then, come back to Lingjian sect and have a look. Maybe you can become an elder. The more the Big Dog relaxed, the more uncomfortable Chen Hua felt. His hand was not injured by himself, but it was also inseparable from him. Okay, now that this matter is over, we should move forward. I came here to find someone. I promised a senior to take good care of them in the demon refining tower. But now, that backfire the city wants to trap and kill tens of thousands of people in the foundation building stage, but it can only find a way to find an exit and take them out. Zuyun clapped his hands and drew their attention back. Big Dog thought for a while and said, Xiaozu, I heard from Li Molan that there is an exit on every floor of the demon refining tower. However, this exit is erratic and difficult to find. Zuyun pondered for a moment and said, by the way, you haven't said yet why you followed him to the demon refining tower. Is it possible that he is cooperating with the Lord of Naihuo City? He suddenly remembered that Yuan Ro's murder of the Wu family was also inseparable from Naihuo City. Although Reverse Fire City did not intervene directly, it also provided convenient conditions. There is no cooperation, Chen Hua said. Fairy Li also said that she came here to look for someone and found something. However, she said that her master gave her a token. When we finish the work, we can use the token to find it. The Lord of Naihuo City said he would send us out. Upon hearing this, Zuyun frowned. In fact, he really didn't want to deal with the Lord of Backfire City. Firstly, the opponent is extremely powerful, and secondly, he is already planning to kill someone. I am not related to him, and if I go there, I am afraid it will not be pork on the chopping board. Did Li Molan tell me any other ways to get out? After just thinking for a moment, Zuyun gave up the idea and asked instead. Then we don't know. Fairy Li didn't say anything else, and we just came with her, wondering if we could be of any help. Chen Hua shook his head, making Zuyun fall into deep thought again. In his opinion, since one enters through the door of the demon refining tower, there is naturally a door to exit. Even if this is a separate space, there must be an entrance and an exit. Moreover, when he pushed open the copper door, Zuyun saw a few bright lights, which looked very similar to the array pattern, but were different from the array pattern. After all, it was still his formation attainments that were not high enough. Maybe Tang Tiangang is here and he can be recognized to some extent, right? It's a pity that it is impossible for him and Tang Tiangang to meet again. Or, the next time they meet, they will be mortal enemies. Zuyun is not strong enough at this time, but that doesn't mean that he will let him go when they meet when he is strong. Forget it, let's take it one step at a time. At this moment, we just don't want to be used as material by the Lord of Backfire City. Zuyun pretended to smile casually, saying that he didn't want to put any more pressure on the two of them. The three of them had their own thoughts and walked along the front. Zuyun called the three dogs out again and let them lead the way. Woof woof. Sangu didn't know what happened here, but smelling a bit of burnt and bloody smell, he could tell that there had been a fight here. Looking at the big dog again, one of its forearms was broken off, and I was very surprised. However, Zuyun did not turn into a metal spirit body, and he could not simply communicate with Zuyun. Instead, he took the initiative to lead the way. The three of them stepped forward with their own spiritual swords and followed the three dogs flying close to the ground. It took a full amount of time for the stick of incense to fly before the three dogs stopped, sniffed the ground a few times, and barked a few more times. How? Zuyun stopped and asked. Sangu stretched out his right paw and wrote a crooked word on the ground. Demon. Zuyun asked, you said there are monsters ahead? Are there many? He felt it carefully. The demon power in the air was as messy as before, but there was nothing special about it. Sangu nodded, his expression extremely solemn. Zuyun touched his chin and muttered to himself, it shouldn't be. You said it wasn't far before, but it only took half an hour at most for me to fight with Li Molan and the two monks. Wu Neng and Wu Nan, even if I'm in a hurry, I won't rush into a group of monsters. Xiaozu, do you think a tide of beasts is coming? They were so frightened that they ran in the wrong direction. Big Dog didn't know the specific situation, but he was also coming up with ideas. It shouldn't be. Wu Neng has little experience, but Wu Nan has seen a lot in the entire Wu family. He is the only guard who survived. This cannot be explained by luck. Therefore, Wu Nan should not run the wrong way. Zuyun guessed for a while, and Chen Hua followed suit. Zuyun, I don't know them, but since you think something is wrong, it must be an accident. If you want to protect them, then we should hurry over and take a look. Now the layer monsters are not strong, but they are strong and not afraid of death. Their numbers are so great that they can easily inspire their beastly nature. The big dog was also convinced. He looked at Zuyun and said, Xiaozu, let's go there quickly. Zuyun thought for a while and said, Chen Hua, you are good at the art of swordsmanship, but you are not suitable for dealing with the beasts head-on. Big dogs are not used to using swords with their left hands yet. Why don't you stay here while I go and see it alone? No. Big Dog and Chen Hua said in unison. Zuyun, you are looking down on me now. I, Chen Hua, am indeed not good at direct combat, but how can a mere ordinary monster hurt me? Yes, Xiaozu. To deal with these monsters, you don't need to use any sword moves. You just need to attach spiritual power to the sword and slash randomly. The big dog also followed suit. Zuyun smiled and said, you guys, okay, let me show my cards. If I can't handle it alone, it will be easier for me to run away. The two of them were dumbfounded. It was true that even Zuyun's body skills could not be seen through by them. When dealing with the two foundation establishment stagers and Li Molan, Zuyun was not even touched by his clothes. Okay, stop talking, I'll come right away. If they can be saved, I will naturally save them. If they can't be saved, you won't be able to help much, and it will be much easier for me to escape. Hearing Zuyun's unquestionable tone, Big Dog and Chen Hua looked at each other speechlessly, and then nodded. Zuyun chuckled lightly, took away the three dogs, and called Zhao Kamang out. After ordering him to protect the two of them, he stepped on his sword and flew quickly towards that direction. After another cup of tea, Zuyun saw billowing smoke and dust. Before the smoke and dust, there was a wave of monster beasts running wildly. He squinted his eyes and felt a little strange why there was no movement at all. Looking further into the distance, he couldn't help but change his expression. He gathered his spiritual power and quickly passed over the beast tide like an arrow from a string. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 336. From a high position, he could see the two people running wildly. Behind them was the surging beast tide, which was close, but only a few feet away. Zuyun was worried that they would trip over a stone, fall to the ground, and then be trampled into a pulp by the beast tide. But obviously, Wu Nan's steps were very fast, and at the same time, he was holding Wu Neng's armpits, so he would not encounter such a situation. If a late foundation building cultivator would be tripped by a stone, it would probably be the biggest joke in the world of immortal cultivation. You two, hold on. Zuyun lowered his altitude and shouted, but he was a little surprised in his heart why the two people did not fly with flying tools. It was not the beast tide in Xian City, where there were birds and monsters sweeping the sky. He was in the sky at this time and did not see it. Zuyun's voice was very penetrating and reached the ears of the two people directly. Wu Nan looked back and followed the direction of the voice. Seeing Zuyun, he shouted frantically, "Chendayu, help, help. Here it comes." Zuyun reached out and took out a gathering heavenly thunder talisman, threw it casually, and threw it towards the center of the beast tide. The talisman turned into ash, flashed a flash of lightning and rushed to the sky. In the blink of an eye, there was a loud bang, and a bucket-like thunder snake fell from the sky, directly engulfing a large number of monsters, forming a vacuum zone in the middle of the beast tide. However, the monsters rushing from the back soon filled up the empty space. Zuyun frowned and said, "It's strange. With such a big momentum and killing so many monsters, how can we not scare them?" The reason why he chose to use the gathering heavenly thunder talisman was not to destroy the beast tide. Looking around, the beast tide monsters were crowded together, countless. Even if Zuyun used up the gathering heavenly thunder talisman, he couldn't clear it. "I just thought that the thunder would scare these monsters away and help the two Wu family members out of trouble. Unfortunately, the gathering heavenly thunder talisman did not work." Zuyun scratched his head and saw that Wu Nan's steps were still steady. Even though he knew that he had come to help, he was not moved. He was concentrating on running away with Wu Neng. Zuyun secretly praised this person for his good character. If he was distracted at this time, he would be swallowed up by the beast tide in an instant. "Try using the Firebird talisman." Zuyun reached into his arms and pinched out the Firebird talisman with 2 fingers. This time, he threw it to the front of the beast tide. Keng! The phoenix rang, and the talisman turned into fire and quickly twisted, turning from a fireball into a fire phoenix, and then spread its wings and rushed over. Boom! The Firebird was much slower than the gathering heavenly thunder talisman, but compared to these monsters, its speed was completely enough. It rushed into the beast tide and exploded immediately. Flames rose and flames splashed. The monsters that were close were burned into fire monsters, and those that were a little further away were also affected. "No, no." Zuyun's eyes condensed, and he whispered a few times, staring at the monsters that were burned by the fire. After a moment, he suddenly opened his eyes wide and found the abnormality. It was too quiet here. The Firebird talisman can hurt the talisman in the Jindan period, but at this time, not a single monster was killed. These are the most ordinary monsters. Even if they have demonic power, they don't know how to use it, and they only rely on the strength of their flesh to attack. But facing attacks, they should still have instincts. Seeking benefits and avoiding harm, fearing death, fearing pain. Could it be that these monsters are fake? Are they illusions? Zuyun felt that it was strange and abnormal, and he couldn't be sure, so he took out another Firebird talisman and threw it at the monster on the other side. Keng! The phoenix rang, and the fire phoenix rushed quickly. But the result was the same. There was no scream from the monsters, not to mention that they started to flee because of the fire. There must be something wrong when things are abnormal. Zuyun frowned. In fact, after killing those foundation building period outside the monster refining tower, he picked up a lot of storage bags and spirit stones, and he could use the flying boat to pick up the two people from the Wu family. But firstly, he didn't want to expose the flying boat, and secondly, he wanted to find out the details of the beast tide. The first layer of space is so large that it is inevitable that he will encounter the same beast tide again. He will have experience to deal with it when the time comes. And the most important thing is that Wu Nan can still protect Wu Nang. Zhu Yun's mind was spinning rapidly, and soon he had a new idea. Wu Nan, hold on, I'm thinking of a way. After shouting to the other side, Zhu Yun slowed down. After the beast tide quickly passed under him, he lowered his altitude and flew close to the ground. After Wu Nan and Wu Nang could no longer notice him, he used the golden escape technique without hesitation and turned himself into a metal spirit. This is one of the reasons why he did not bring Ergo and Chen Hua with him. It was not that he was hiding something on purpose. But as his realm improved, he would know more and more. For example, some powerful cultivators could use their soul power to invade other people's purple palaces and seize their memories. He believed that Chen Hua and De Go would not talk nonsense. But what if a powerful person knew it through their memories? Zhu Yun has always been cautious. In other words, the higher his realm, the more cautious he is. After turning into a metal spirit, Zhu Yun's body suddenly jumped up and floated behind the beast tide. After finding that some of the monsters closest to him were unmoved, he bravely accelerated and approached slowly. The spirit person didn't have any means to attack, so he didn't dare to get too close. If these monsters were real, any kick would knock him to the ground. He might even be kicked to death directly. The spirit body has no protection at all. As Zhu Yun gradually approached, he became more and more cautious. But soon, he found that the monsters behind him seemed to turn a blind eye. Even if they were parallel to some monsters not far away, they didn't even look at him. Is it really an illusion? Zhu Yun secretly thought in his heart and made a bold decision to float towards a monster that looked like the most ordinary monster. Zhu Yun didn't recognize the monster beast. It had no fangs or sharp claws. Apart from being ugly, there is nothing special about him. When he got 2 steps closer and maintained the same speed as the monster, Zhu Yun finally discovered the problem. This monster looks like it is running wildly, but the problem is that its expression has not changed at all. It's fake, it must be fake. Zhu Yun was extremely sure, but there were still follow-up questions and he needed to figure out the reasons. If this tide of beasts is fake, will Wu Nan be harmed if he stops? In other words, does this illusion have attack power? Will it have a real attack? At the moment, Zhu Yun didn't dare to bet, because the existence made sense, but he was new to the demon refining tower, and there was very little news related to it in Chuzhou, so he couldn't be sure. Is it to scare people, or is it really attacking people? But no matter what is the purpose of this illusion? By the way, since it is an illusion, what is the core that provides spiritual power? Is it the mid-grade spiritual stone that was previously guessed? Can the spiritual stone move on its own? More than a stick of incense has passed since he discovered the beast tide. The speed of the beast tide is not very fast, but it is definitely not slow either. Unless these illusions are like flying boats, traveling as they go. But on the other hand, if it is already an illusion, how can it possibly bring something real? That being said, Zhu Yun's eyes suddenly lit up and he discovered his misunderstanding. Since it is an illusion, then this is obviously an illusion array. There is no need to bring spiritual stones with you. Since it's a formation, I'll find the center of the formation first. Zhu Yun's heart suddenly enlightened, and he no longer ran parallel to these monsters, but stopped and landed directly on the ground. After all, he also knew that this illusion formation was extremely difficult to break. He didn't know when he fell into this formation, and he didn't even notice a single formation pattern. But the formation remains unchanged despite all changes. As long as you are in the formation, you can find the formation patterns. Zuyun now needs to find a formation pattern. It was like a rope that was tangled up in a ball. He needed to find a piece of it before he could slowly straighten it out. The moment he landed, Zuyun returned to his human form. He first stamped his feet vigorously, causing a cloud of dust and smoke to rise from the ground. After careful observation, Zuyun was sure that the ground was real. He just stood there and began to release his spiritual consciousness with himself as the center. The spiritual consciousness spread along the ground, and soon he discovered that not far away, there was an unnatural hole under the ground, the size of a fist. In other words, the human traces are very obvious. He felt happy and rushed over there quickly. However, when he stood at the location of the pothole, he discovered that not only could it not be seen with the naked eye, but it could not even be detected by spiritual consciousness. That's weird, what's going on? Zuyun was stunned and couldn't figure out why for a while. He scratched his head and stamped the ground again. There was a dull sound under my feet, nothing unusual. After thinking for a moment, Zuyun's eyes lit up. He thought of what Sun Suanhua had said to him, and immediately thought of a solution. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 337. Sun Suanhua said that people have eyes and formations have eyes. Only with eyeballs in human eye sockets can we see. The formation can only operate if there is a spiritual stone in the formation eye. But human eyeballs are protected by eyelids, so naturally the array eyes also have corresponding protection. Zuyun has broken through many formations, and is as powerful as the fire Lingzhu Island in the sea. It's just that he has always broken through the formation wall instead of starting from within the formation. Therefore, his experience is not enough. Fortunately, when learning the 7 methods from Sun Suanhua, Zuyun not only studied them carefully, but also learned to draw inferences from one instance and think on his own. But at this time, that was the case. The formation eye is the key to the formation, so when it is far away, my spiritual sense can sense it, but not when it is close. Zuyun had something in mind and put himself into the scene when the formation was being set up. The most commonly used ones recently, besides the 9 turns and 9 suns formation, are the self-destruction formation and the spirit guiding formation. The 9 revolutions and 9 suns formation is usually deployed with instant release of spirit stones. Most of the changes are cut out based on the actual situation, and it is basically used immediately after being deployed, so there is no need to cover up the formation eyes. The 9 spiritual stones are the 9 formation eyes. When using the self-destruction array, especially when several self-destruction arrays are connected, Zuyun always uses it as a trap, so the spirit guiding array is needed as a mechanism to activate it. At this time, when I think about setting up my own formation, I would subconsciously do something to cover it up, but when I was in someone else's formation, I couldn't think of it for a while. Zuyun secretly laughed. This is what the so-called authorities are confused about. With a chuckle, Zuyun gathered his spiritual consciousness and poured it under his feet. But still found nothing. Humph, dig it out and take a look. Formation attainments are not only reflected in the speed of deployment and the number of formations mastered, but the more important point is how to prevent the formation eyes from being discovered. Compared to the previous one, this point is even more important. Just imagine, if you set up a mysterious formation that reaches the sky, the formation will be easily discovered by others. So, even if this formation is a killing formation, so what? The formation is another weakness. In most formations, if the formation eye is destroyed, then this formation is equivalent to one person having one arm cut off. Even if it is not destroyed, its function is greatly lost. For people like Tang Tiangang who entered the Tao through formations, Zuyun couldn't even discover how many formations there were in his hall. Not to mention, the huddled formation from outside the main hall to the door of the city lord's mansion. This was also the reason why Zuyun did not seek revenge against Tang Tiangang at this time to vent his anger for being hunted to the 100,000 mountains. At the moment, Zuyun has not found the formation I, but he is not in a hurry. Although the people who set up the formation were very powerful, Zuyun felt that they were still not as strong as Tang Tiangang. In this way, it is at most the level of the foundation building period. I just haven't found the key point. Moreover, the position of the formation I has been determined before, and the worst case scenario is to dig it out. Generally speaking, phantom formations are only used to trap people and have no real attack power. It is for this reason that Zuyun is so unscrupulous. If it was a killing formation or something like that, Zuyun would never dare to have such an idea. Using the spiritual sword in his hand as a shovel, Zuyun dug under his feet. Who would have thought that the soil under his feet was extremely thick? He shoveled hard, but only a small amount of soil was shoveled out. But Zuyun was not impatient and continued digging downwards. After digging for about a stick of incense, Zuyun suddenly noticed movement coming from directly in front of him. When he looked up, he discovered that Wu Neng and Wu Nan were 100 steps away. Behind them, there was still a surging horde of monster beasts. Seeing this scene, he suddenly understood. He grinned and said to himself, "It is indeed an illusion array. No wonder I didn't hear any movement when I was not too far away. You know, this beast wave was running against him before, but now it is coming towards him. It is obvious that this phantom formation can also produce the ability of ghosts to break walls." At the same time, Zuyun knew that this formation was meant to trap people until they died of exhaustion. After understanding the function of the formation, Zuyun didn't panic anymore. He waved to Wu Neng and Wu Nan who were running towards them, and said, "Don't panic, fly up and hide." Hearing Zuyun's voice, Wu Neng quickly looked over. In just 1 or 2 breaths, they were only dozens of steps apart. Wu Nan was surprised and said, "Fellow Daoist Chen, aren't you lagging behind? Why are you in front of us?" Zuyun did not answer, but urged, "Hurry up and take off, otherwise, when are you planning to run?" After saying that, Zuyun himself stood up on his sword and soared into the sky. Wu Nan gritted his teeth and used his long sword to fly to Zuyun's side. Just when he was about to let the tide of beasts rush past his feet, he discovered that as long as the monsters reached the position under his feet, they would quickly disappear. Wu Nan and Wu Neng were both extremely surprised by this sudden change. Why is the monster missing?" The two looked at each other, and then looked at Zuyun in disbelief. Zuyun shrugged and said, "I don't know either, but why didn't you fly before? If you had flown earlier, you wouldn't have to be chased so hard." Wu Nan smiled bitterly and said, "Fellow Daoist Chen, wielding the sword consumes too much spiritual energy. I don't dare to abuse it. I keep it just in case." Zuyun's heart moved, and he suddenly realized something. The person who set up the formation can also play with people's hearts. The first level is known for its large number of monsters. So, he set up this formation. If anyone entered the formation, they would see a tide of beasts. If you look closely at this tide of beasts, you won't be able to tell the truth from the fake ones. In desperation, a normal monk would choose to run away. For example, Wu Nan had to take Wu Neng with him, but also had to worry about the consumption of spiritual power. Even when some monks fly up, they only want to stay away from here, but they never know that as long as they stop, the monster will disappear as soon as it rushes towards them. This formation, seemingly ordinary, is actually very mysterious. Zuyun had a vague realization in his heart, 70% true, 30% false. Maybe in the future, I can make a virtual formation myself, and maybe it will have miraculous effects. Fellow Daoist Chen, have you discovered the mystery of this formation a long time ago? At this time, Wu Neng spoke. He blushed when he remembered that he had desperately called Zuyun to help. Fortunately, he was still the head of the clan. Not only was he taken away by his subordinates, but he also had to ask outsiders for help. When I asked you to hold on, I found some clues, but I can't be sure whether these monsters are real. What if I ask you to stop and these monsters knock you down? Zuyun asked on the surface, but felt helpless in his heart. Sangu said that he smelled the scent of monsters. Could it be possible that this illusion also happened? He knew that when the illusory formation was deployed to the extreme, it could indeed be as real as the real thing. But Zuyun felt that it was absolutely impossible for these monsters to disappear in an instant. So, besides the formation, there is also a tide of beasts. So, could it also be the method used by those who set up the formation? As long as you get out of the formation, you will encounter a real tide of beasts. This is used to allow people who accidentally discovered that the beast tide is an illusion, and when faced with the real beast tide, they still respond with fake things. Therefore, he will die here. Zuyun is not sure, because the most important thing right now is to break the formation. You guys come down first to rest and recover your spiritual power. I still have things to do. After saying that, he landed first and stood at the previous position, continuing to hold the spirit sword and start digging the hole. Wu Nan was indeed very tired, but Wu Neng had hardly used up much. He didn't need to recover, but he walked up to Zuyun and asked, "Fellow Daoist Chen, what are you digging a hole for?" "Break the formation." Zuyun thrust his sword into the soil, pried it hard, and pulled out a handful of soil. "This formation is so big, how can you dig a hole and break it?" "I don't believe it." Wu Neng grew up with Lin Wen and heard many anecdotes about the Peeper realm. Although the formations were not unfamiliar to him, they were not unfamiliar. Because there is also a formation in the house where Lin Wen lives. It's none of my business whether you believe it or not. Zuyun rolled his eyes, then threw the sword over and said, "I seem to remember Mr. Lin telling me to let you enter the demon refining tower and listen to my command. Well, I'm tired of digging, you follow this whole dig for a while." Wu Neng was dumbfounded. He wished he could give himself a big mouth and recover properly. However, he got curious and asked more questions. It turned out that the dignified clan leader had to do such a job. But Zuyun had already spoken, and he had no choice. He had no choice but to hold the long sword and imitate Zuyun's movements and start digging holes. But after digging for more than an hour, even Wu Nan's spiritual power had been restored, and nothing was dug out. "Fellow Daoist Chen, you are not playing tricks on me, are you?" Wu Neng frowned and said while leaning on his spiritual sword. "People are not tired, but their hearts are tired. The ground is too difficult to dig." Zuyun did not respond, but touched his chin and thought over and over again. When Wu Neng was digging, he wasn't just watching the show. Instead, use this hole as the center, measure the distance, and then use your spiritual sense to explore. But the problem is, nothing is found. This was true even when he stood in the position where he discovered the abnormality. Could it be that, this array of eyes is also hidden with a magic array? Suddenly, this idea came to Zuyun's mind, and he immediately thought of a countermeasure, and a smile emerged from the corner of his mouth. Seeing this, Wu Neng thought he didn't have to dig anymore, so he stepped forward with a look of joy and respectfully handed the spirit sword back with both hands. Zuyun took the spirit sword and hung it on his waist with a smile, then took out a hammer from his storage bag and stuffed it into Wu Neng's hand. "Clan Chief Wu, I am optimistic about you, now try this." Wu Neng looked at Zuyun, then at the small hammer in his hand, and cursed in his heart. "Digging a hole with a hammer? You dig a hammer. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills." Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 338. Seeing Wu Neng not moving, Zuyun smiled and said, "It's not about digging. You can try to smash it. If there is anything abnormal, let me know." After that, he sat down and began to recover his spiritual power. In the illusion array, he didn't know what situation he would encounter, so he needed to ensure that his spiritual power was full at all times. This hammer was naturally the Fuebao breaking array hammer. Zuyun guessed that the reason why the array I could not be found must be related to the array. If the array I could be hit, the number of times the hammer could be used would naturally decrease, and the user could also feel it. He didn't want to use the hammer to break the array I, but to use the hammer to determine the location of the array I. The Fuebao used less each time, and the key was that he didn't know how many times it would take to break the array I. Wu Neng looked at Zuyun, and then at the hammer in his hand, and then he found that the hammer was actually flowing with spiritual power. Is this a magic weapon? Well, just treat it as a magic weapon. Go and hammer it. Zuyun raised his eyelids and was too lazy to explain. Seeing Zuyun say this, Wu Neng began to smash the hole with the hammer. For a while, dust flew, dirt flew everywhere, and the hole became bigger and bigger. But when Wu Neng used it, he felt that there was nothing special about it, as if this magic weapon was not very useful. What made him even more surprised was that Wu Neng tried to pour spiritual power into it, but found that it could not penetrate at all. But the hammer had some mysterious patterns all over it, which he could not understand at all. Isn't this a magic weapon? How can a magic weapon not penetrate spiritual power? Wu Neng gradually focused his attention on the patterns, hammering the ground while observing the direction of the patterns. From time to time, he tried his spiritual power again, completely forgetting why he was hammering the hole here. It was not until a strong recoil force suddenly came from his hand, which sent the whole hammer flying out, that he reacted and his eyes widened suddenly. At the same time, another exclamation sounded. It turned out that the hammer happened to hit Wu Nan. Zuyun opened his eyes, looked in front of him, and couldn't help but frowned and shouted, "I asked you to make a hole, why are you angry?" He thought Wu Nan was tired of smashing, so he threw the hammer to Wu Nan and asked him to smash it. No, I just hit something, and I didn't hold the hammer tightly for a while." Seeing Zuyun's unfriendly face, Wu Neng hurriedly explained. Wu Nan also stood up, picked up the hammer and handed it to Zuyun, saying, "Don't blame me, fellow Daoist Chen, the clan leader didn't ask me to help, it should be that it hit something and bounced out." Huh. Zuyun was stunned, and quickly penetrated his spiritual consciousness into the formation-breaking hammer. Sure enough, he found that the number of uses was reduced by 1, and he couldn't help but be overjoyed. "Wu Neng, come over here, let me take a look." This obviously hit the center of the formation. I didn't expect that my method would really work. Moreover, this center of the formation is not an active center of the formation. It's just that because of the formation, some kind of sleight of hand was used. Thinking of this, Zuyun approached the pit with a hammer. The pit, which was originally only a few fists wide, was hammered out by Wu Neng. But with the naked eye, you can't see what's there. Zuyun touched his nose, and a flash of inspiration came to him. "Don't I have the broken void spirit Iju?" He slapped his head fiercely. Lin Wen didn't tell him the function of the broken void spirit Iju, but he imprinted all the functions related to it in his mind. If Zuyun didn't think about it actively, he would definitely not be able to remember it. After thinking for a moment, he moved his spiritual power to his eyes. A touch of spirituality flashed in his eyes, and Zuyun also felt the coolness in his eyes, and then he looked down at the pit. Suddenly, he was ecstatic. At the bottom of the pit, there was a circular array eye, and a spiritual stone was embedded in the array eye. The spiritual stone and the array eye were connected by extremely complex array patterns. Moreover, these array patterns flickered alternately, indicating that the array was in operation. Zuyun took out the spiritual sword, pointed the tip of the sword at one of the array patterns and slashed it. He didn't quite understand the specific functions of these array patterns, but he could tell that this array pattern was related to the operation of spiritual power. There are many kinds of array patterns, and most of these array patterns are similar to the ends of the meridians in the body, which are used to transport and operate spiritual power. Of course, if you make a mistake, it will cause the operation of spiritual power here to be blocked, which is very likely to cause the array eye to explode. Although the array eye is small, it will gather the power of the entire array when it explodes. This illusion array is quite grand. Even if it is just an illusion array, Zuyun dare not be careless. But fortunately, he recognized the array pattern. The spiritual sword passed, and the array pattern was directly cut off by Zuyun. Several array patterns on the side were affected immediately, but soon returned to their original state. But Zuyun knew that the array center had been destroyed by him. The mission was completed. Just as he stood up, Wu Nan leaned over and asked, "Fellow Daoist Chen, is this done?" Earlier, Zuyun said that he had broken the array, but he saw that Zuyun didn't seem to have used much spiritual power, so he withdrew from the pit. "Well, the array center has been destroyed." Hearing Zuyun say this, Wu Nan looked unconvinced, pointed around and said, "Are you lying? You said this was an illusion array at first, but you destroyed the array center, and it didn't change. Do you want me to dig a pit?" Just after he finished speaking, he heard Wu Nan exclaimed, "Huh? There is really an array center here." It turns out that they couldn't see anything different about the pothole at first. But when Zuyun cut off the formation pattern, the formation eye was revealed. Not only Wu Nan could see it, but Wu Nan also saw it after he came over. He stared and said, "Is there really something? By the way, didn't you say you wanted to destroy it? Why do I still see it fine?" "Yes, fellow Daoist Chen, how about I destroy it? Maybe we can go out into battle." Wu Nan was also secretly happy. After saying that, he took out his sword and was about to kill him. "Don't." Zuyun was shocked and hurriedly stood in front of the pothole and said, "You can't move the eyes anymore. If it explodes, I'm afraid you and I will have to stay here forever. Isn't it possible? This is just a spiritual stone-driven formation eye. How can it be so powerful? I don't believe it." Wu Nan also took out the knife and dangled it in his hand. Zuyun shouted angrily, "Wu Nan, if you want to die, I won't hold you back." Seeing Zuyun's reaction so fiercely, Wu Nan quickly shrank his neck and did not dare to move. From this tone, it seemed that if he moved again, Zuyun might kill him. But being scolded by Zuyun in front of Wu Nan, he felt that he had lost some face, so he had to say harshly, "Then you said that you have destroyed the formation, but there is no change in the formation at all." Zuyun sneered, holding the sword on Wu Nan's palm, "Tell me, if I chop off these fingers of yours, will you die?" Wu Nan knew that Zuyun would not hurt him if he didn't move his eyes, so he curled his lips and said, "Don't talk about your fingers, you won't die even if your hands are chopped off." As soon as he finished speaking, Wu Nan said loudly, "I understand. Fellow Daoist Chen, what you mean is that this formation of eyes will not hurt the root, but if you force this formation back, it will trigger the entire formation." Zuyun was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "That's the reason. Therefore, if we want to break the formation, we have to find some formation eyes. As I said, this formation is very grand, and there must be countless such formation eyes. But if it can be damaged to a certain extent and the formation cannot operate normally, we can get out safely. Fellow Daoist Chen, you know so much, I admire you so much." Wu Nan was shocked. In Naihuo City, he only thought that Zuyun was a talisman master, but now he showed his hand, showing that he was still an formation master. These two attainments are not low, and his realm has reached the peak of the late foundation building stage. If it were an old monk who was over 100 years old, Wu Nan wouldn't find it strange. But the key is that Zuyun is too young. Comparing it to his clan leader Wu Nan, Wu Nan blushed in his heart. Comparing people to each other is so annoying. Fellow Daoist Wu, no matter how much you know, am I still falling for this illusory formation? Let's go. I have never seen this formation before, and I don't know how many formation eyes I need to destroy before I can get out safely. Zuyun ordered the two of them to walk side by side with him, and the three of them released their spiritual consciousness in three directions, left, middle and right. When the distance is far away, you can find the location of the array eye, but when you get closer, the self-concealment of the phantom array may be triggered and the array eye will be blocked. However, Zuyun is no longer panicking. The void-breaking spiritual eye technique can not only see the formation eyes, but also the formation patterns clearly. The three of them followed suit, and only half an hour later, they discovered something again. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 339. Another formation point. The three of them each performed their duties. Wu Nan was responsible for guarding and sentry, and Wu Nan had to use his knife to dig holes. In Zuyun's words, his knife is wider than his own sword, making it easier to dig. As for Zuyun, he used the Shattering Void Spirit Eye technique to find the location of the formation eye. The formation breaking hammer is no longer needed. Several hours passed, and Zuyun destroyed several formations. On the other side, De Go and Chen Hua stayed where they were, panicking. But fortunately, Zhao Kamang was here, so they simply sat on the ground and started practicing. On the southern coast of Chuzhu, a young man wearing coarse linen clothes came ashore. His face was cold and his skin was dark. After searching the shore for a while, he uttered a word. "Is this Chuzhu? Find someone to inquire about the situation first." After that, we walked inland along the coast. He walked aimlessly and casually, and soon he was far away from the coast. At the same time, the temperature began to rise significantly, and it was no longer cool. But he was a monk after all, so it had no influence on him at all. After walking a few more miles, he saw a simple wooden house. The wooden house has a chimney, and smoke is billowing out. Want to make a fire to cook? That's just immortal. He restrained his aura and walked quickly towards the wooden house. When he approached the wooden house, he found a strong young man busy in the house. Hearing the footsteps, the young man looked outside and saw a child. He couldn't help but rush out and asked, "Little kid, why are you here alone? Where are your parents?" "I went fishing with my father, but there was a storm, the boat sank, and I floated ashore." When he crossed the sea, he did meet some ordinary fishermen who made a living by fishing. You can also see many ships in distress, not just storms, but also monsters attacking people. It's okay to encounter a storm, you can survive if you have better luck. But if you encounter a monster causing trouble, you will definitely die. The young man did not doubt that he was there. After saying his condolences, he said, "Little kid, what's your name? You're so hungry. Come and have something to eat together. I'll help you find out, and maybe I can find your home. My name is Zufeng. My village has no name, it's just by the sea. This is the blessing that came all the way from Zixi Island in the sea. And the strength reaches the 12th level of Qi refining." Zufeng, little baby, that young man was just immortal. How could he know that the child in front of him had already taken countless lives? Instead, he comforted him by saying, "Eat some fish soup first. It's okay if you can't find a home. Let's settle down first." The young man smiled and gave Zufeng a bowl of fish soup. Zufeng took it and thanked him repeatedly. To be honest, he hasn't eaten in a long time. At his level, even though he has not yet reached Bigu, he has killed all the generals coming all the way. Some ordinary sea monks are more or less equipped with bigu pills and cannot starve him. But at this time, in order to confuse the young man and get more information, he still took the fish soup and drank it all in one gulp. Wiping his mouth, Zhu Feng thanked him, and then asked, "Brother, where is this place? Is there any place that I can't go to?" The young man put down the bowl and said with a smile, "This is the land of Chinen. If you say you can't go there, just try not to go north. It is said that there are many immortal masters walking there. I heard from the village chief that there are still places 3,000 miles north. There is a volcanic land. There are volcanoes erupting every day. It is not something that ordinary people like us can do if we want to go through it. Moreover, the village chief also said that the volcanic land is there. There is another immortal sect. All the immortal masters in that immortal sect are those who play with fire." Zhu Feng squinted his eyes and remembered it in his heart. In the sea area, because there are few monks, in order to improve his strength, he does not spare even mortals. And he discovered that mortals had very little effect on him. But now that he knew there was a sect, he immediately decided where to go. He has no plans to kill monsters yet. The monster doesn't care what state you are in, as long as it thinks it can kill you, it will attack. But people don't. It's like this young man thinks that he is an ordinary child and poses no threat to him, so he is so easy to talk to. The same goes for going within the sect. If I can sneak in, others will probably not take it seriously when they see that I am at the 12th level of chi refining. When the time comes, he will be able to assassinate some disciples in the chi refining stage to enhance his own strength. Unconsciously, Zhu Feng secretly made a decision. "Baby, are you full? If not, please eat some more." Seeing that Zhu Feng was in a daze, the young man thought he was thinking of his father who was in a shipwreck, so he couldn't help but whisper. Zhu Feng smiled and said, "Brother, I'm full and it's time to go. Thank you very much." After saying that, he ran out of the house and ran towards the north. It's not like being on the sea, where whether you can meet a monk depends on luck. But in 3 years, he didn't kill many people. And now there is a large sect waiting for him, how can he not be excited? When the young man saw this, he followed him out of the house, but when he arrived at the door, he didn't find Zhu Feng's shadow. He couldn't help but touch his chin, and then shuddered again. Could it be that, you encountered a ghost? The young man had no idea that he had walked around the gate of hell. If he were still above the sea, Zhu Feng would not even spare mortals. But the reason why he didn't kill the young man was because Zhu Feng had a goal of greater profit and no longer bothered to kill him. Shrinking his neck, the young man was about to go back to the house, but suddenly he heard someone calling him. Looking back, I saw several people coming from the direction of the seaside, carrying a wooden frame, and there was another person on the frame. The person who called him was the village chief. "Aniao, what are you looking at? Come here quickly." The village chief is an old man with a grey beard, but looks very fit and healthy. Coming. Aniao thought that they might have rescued a person in the sea, so he planned to carry him to the village for treatment. Could it be Zhu Feng's father? Just thinking about it, Aniao had already rushed to everyone, and then he discovered that there was a pale-faced woman on the simple wooden shelf. "Stop looking, help lift it up quickly, and go to the doctor to see if he can be saved." The village chief shouted loudly, which brought Aniao back to his senses, and he quickly stepped forward to help. After getting Aniao's help, the village chief freed up his hands and began to say, "We just picked her up from the sea, but I am exhausted from walking." Aniao lived at the very edge of their village, and it would still take about 5 miles to reach the gathering place in the village. In addition to the village chief, there were 3 other people. Bird knows everyone. The seaside is still several miles away. They were probably exhausted when they returned from the sea, so they called for help. With Aniao's help, Their steps became much faster. Niao walked in front, but he couldn't help but want to look back at this woman. Not to mention how exquisite that face is, Niao has never seen this set of clothes before. Niao, you went astray, what were you thinking about? Suddenly, the village chief turned around and cursed again. When Niao came to his senses, he realized that he had indeed gone astray, and his face turned red. He, Niao must be thinking about a wife, right? At this time, the middle-aged man standing next to Niao joked. Another person also said, haha, who makes Niao think so highly of himself that he can look down on girls from all over the place? Not to mention, this foreign woman is beautiful, but I don't think this girl is a fisherman. Could it be that she drifted here from further away? The village chief also joined in and said with a smile, Niao, please work harder. When the time comes, when the girl wakes up, we will all say that you saved her alone. A bird's face turned redder. He didn't live in the village for a long time, which was actually a matter of concern. It wasn't that he didn't like the excitement. Everyone's words are fishermen, and their words have a somewhat fishy smell. Niao's reply to the previous sentence would cause the others to laugh. He simply stopped making any sound. Until the village appeared in front of them, a total of 5 people also shut up and carried the wooden frame directly to a slightly spacious house. Oh, come out and save people. We picked up a girl on the sea. As soon as he entered the door, the village chief's loud voice spread throughout the village. Some idle village women poked their heads out of their houses. After seeing that they were all men from their own village and Niao, they gathered around here. As for the witch the village chief was talking about, he walked out of the house and complained, you can still pick up girls at sea? I think you are crazy about girls, right? After saying that, he looked up and saw Niao, and couldn't help but grin, we're a rare visitor. Niao chuckled and said, Uncle Wu, don't look at me, look at her. We finally carried it here. The Jiaolian people had already been placed on the ground. Wu stepped forward, his face tightened, and then he shook his head and said, I can't save this fairy. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 340. Upon hearing this, the village chief became anxious, puffed his beard and glared, and said, Wu, don't you always say that your medical skills are the best in China? Why do you say you can't save people this time? The middle-aged man who was carrying Niao in front also said, Wu, stop talking nonsense and save me quickly. This is Niao's future wife. Hearing this, Niao's face suddenly turned red. Outside, the village women also gathered around. They didn't hear anyone say that they couldn't be saved, or they didn't care at all. On the contrary, it was the middle-aged man's words that immediately made them interested. She's Niao's wife? No wonder Niao is willing to come to the village. Hey, don't tell me, this girl is so handsome. He is indeed quite handsome, almost the same as when I was 18. Hey, shameless, you're 18 years old and you still have a snot. Wow, look at me tearing your mouth apart. Where there are many women, there is always a lot of trouble. The room where Haoduan was treating people became lively in an instant. Wu said angrily with a sullen face, it's almost time to disperse. If we wake up the fairy, you will be in trouble. Upon hearing this, the women stopped immediately. Fairy. Only then did Niao realize that when Wu said he couldn't save him, he was calling the fairy. The rest of the people either said women or girls. Oh, didn't you say you couldn't save her? Why did you say she would wake up? The village chief calmed down and asked again when he saw that the village women had stopped arguing. Wu said contemptuously, Village chief, you are also a well-experienced person in our village. When I said the word fairy, didn't you hear it? The village chief was stunned for a moment, then took a few steps back abruptly and said tremblingly, you mean, This is the female fairy. What? Immortal master. No wonder she's so beautiful, she turns out to be an immortal master. I heard that female immortals are always good looking. Could she be hundreds of years old? Don't talk nonsense. If the female fairy hears you talking about her age, she will tear your mouth apart later. The village chief's face also darkened, and he said angrily to these village women, "Go home, don't stay here. What if I wake up the immortal master? He is the oldest in the village and has indeed met some monks. Even when he was young, one of his playmates said he had the talent to cultivate immortality and was taken away by an expert. In the past few years, he would come back occasionally and give them some gold and silver for mortals, but then the frequency became less and less, and now he has not come back for 50 years. And he was promoted to the position of clan leader 30 years ago. It's not that he's older. But he and the immortal master were the best playmates when they were young. The noise won't wake us up, but if the fairy wakes up on her own and sees so many people watching, if she gets angry, our entire village may be buried with her." Awu spoke in a more serious tone, and the women immediately dispersed. The other 3 strong men who came with the village chief also left quickly, not daring to stay here longer. A Niao was also about to go home, but he heard Awu calling out to him. "Oh, what are you calling me for?" Originally, she was indeed a little obsessed with this woman's appearance. But after hearing that he was an immortal master, he had no thoughts at all. "You stay and take care of it," Awu said, really frightening a Niao. The village chief pointed to his nose and said, "What about me?" Awu sneered, "Do you think you're better looking than a Niao? Or are you better at handling things than a Niao?" The village chief shut up angrily and left angrily. In fact, after he knew that this woman was a monk, he inevitably had some thoughts in his mind. A playmate from those days once told him that gold and silver are of no use to monks. He was not selfish, but he thought that if the nun would reward them with some gold and silver for lifting her out of the sea, it would also improve the conditions in the village. After seeing the village chief leave, Awu said, "A bird, go and get the jar from the table." "Oh, the village chief can also take this jar." A Niao's legs felt weak, and he regretted his bold idea just now. "He can take it, but not his blood." Awu glared at him and said, "Hurry up, don't think that I can't beat you because I'm old, Awu." Awu is the village doctor and the most capable person in the village. Specialized in hitting people, the hit is accurate. Although it does not hurt the person's fundamentals, it will cause pain for 10 or 8 days. A Niao looked mournful and said, "Awu, are you going to bleed me again?" After all, A Niao took an earthen jar from the shelf. "Just put a little bit on it," Awu said easily. "By the way, when you were alone, no one saw your blood, right?" "No, no, how could I dare? You said my blood is nourishing, but I didn't tell anyone." A Niao said and looked outside again, but there was no one there at this time. At the same time, he also understood that it was not that the witch couldn't save the fairy, but that he needed his own blood, so he dispersed the crowd. "Get ready, I'm going to bleed." Awu took out a simple-looking dagger from his arms, then spat on it, wiped it casually with the corner of his clothes, and then held a Niao's wrist with one hand, intending to cut it off. "Awu, Awu," A Niao's expression changed and he said, "Why don't you clean it up? Why, do you think Awu's saliva is dirty?" Awu's face was stern, and he cursed, but he still lit a stick and put the dagger on the fire to roast it. "Awu, how dare I? I'm afraid that the blood I spilled will taste the taste of your saliva, and you will suffer." A Niao frowned, then clenched his teeth and watched Awu cut his wrist with the knife. Pain came, hot stream flowed out, and the bright red blood flowed into the earthen jar. "A Niao, have you turned into a bird during this period?" Awu suddenly asked, twisting his wrist. The reason why a Niao is called a Niao is because he once turned into a bird, and then Awu rescued him. But Ao is the only one in the village who knows about this. He was picked up by Ao. Ao, don't talk about this, we are still good friends. Niao lowered his head, which is why he lived alone away from the village. He was never under his control when he turned into a bird, but after a while, he would be conscious and could turn back. I was afraid that I would scare the villagers in the village. It was in the south of Chun. If it was in the north of Chun, I'm afraid you would have been captured and cut by some monks. When Awu saw that the blood in the kin was almost gone, he took a rag and covered the bird's wound, saying, "Anyway, I taught you a way. If you turn into a bird, you can use that method to turn back." Awu turned around with the can, took some herbs from the shelf on the side of the house and threw them into the can. After tinkering with it for a while, he walked to the side of the female cultivator, gently opened her mouth, and poured all the medicine into it. "Awu, what should we do if this fairy wakes up?" Niao let go, moved his wrist, and threw the rag back. The wound had healed. "What should I do? Just ignore it? I was born as a doctor, how can I watch someone die without saving him?" After saying that, he looked at Niao again and said, "Whether it's a fairy or a mortal, a human or a demon, as long as I meet them, I can save them." Niao curled his lips and said, "But Awu, you said before that there is a sect in Chubei called the Silver Sword section. The fairies in that sect are more likely to lie the more beautiful they are. This fairy is so beautiful, I wonder if she is from the Silver Sword section." Awu sneered and said, "You have a good memory, but why is your brain as small as a bird? This person was fished out of the sea. Chubei and Chennai are more than 10,000 miles apart. Do you think a normal fairy from the Silver Sword sect would run so far to the sea? To take a bath?" Niao shut up immediately. If he didn't know Awu's temperament, he would definitely talk back. But he thought again and asked, "Then Awu, could she be a cultivator from the sea?" When he said this, Zhu Feng suddenly appeared in his mind. "Look at her clothes, she doesn't look like a cultivator from the sea. She may have come from the sea. She may be a cultivator from Yunzhou." Awu said thoughtfully, and then saw Niao was a little absent-minded, so he stretched out his hand and waved it in front of him, saying, "Why, what did you think of?" Niao came back to his senses and said, "Before the village chief asked me for help, I met a kid in his teens who said he also fell into the water. But after drinking a bowl of fish soup from me and asking for some information, he ran away like the wind. I ran out to see him and he was gone. I almost thought I saw a ghost. Niao, there are no cultivators in our Chennai area, but it doesn't mean that there will be no cultivators coming. The kid you mentioned is probably also a cultivator. Don't take it to heart." Awu responded casually and said no more. Niao was standing here perfectly fine, so it was useless to ask more questions. At this moment, the female cultivator on the shelf suddenly groaned and slowly woke up. The two of them tensed up and turned around at the same time. "Where is this?" Mengwei looked at Niao and Awu, who were dressed very differently, with a confused look in her eyes. What surprised her was that there seemed to be a flame burning in her lower abdomen.